Why choose plyometrics? Today we talk about why to choose plyometric training. What does plyometrics or plyometric training do? So what are the adaptations to plyometric training? And how can plyometrics help the sport you are competing in? So why choose plyometrics? If you're considering to do plyometrics, you need to think about, in my opinion, first, what does plyometric do? So what are the adaptations to plyometric training? And then see whether that makes sense to incorporate plyometrics into your training plan, depending on the goal you're training for. So what does plyometric do? We've spoken about the adaptations to plyometric training before. So there are mainly two adaptations. So one is on the neuromuscular level, so the signal that travels from the brain to the muscle and then back to the brain, so it's a so-called feedback loop. And the other adaptation is on the muscular level or the muscle-tendon complex. So let's get through to these examples. So if we look at the adaptations on the neuromuscular level, there are three main adaptations. One is the recruitment of muscle fibers, one is the firing frequency, and one is the synchronization. So plyometrics basically works mainly on the firing frequency. So how fast the signal from the brain travels to the muscle and the muscle can react or contract. Yeah? On the muscular tendon level, the adaptations of plyometrics is that it strengthens the muscle-tendon complex. So you need to think of the muscle being attached to a tendon and the tendon is attached to the bone. So the complex of the tendon and the muscle is getting stronger. Yeah? So you get stronger tendons and stronger muscles. So what that means is if you have higher loads of either loads on the bar or higher stretch loads, so impact on the muscle, this muscle-tendon complex, this stronger muscle-tendon complex, can absorb and use the forces much more effective and efficiently. So talking about the muscle-tendon complex, also one thing is important to mention is that there is so-called, once people talk about elasticity, so the muscle is elastic, which means it can be stretched and recoil faster than before, plus the so-called stiffness. Yeah? So the muscle in itself, the muscle-tendon complex becomes much stiffer. So now if you think about should I choose plyometrics or not, you need to think about your sport. Is any of these adaptations interesting for your sport? Are you in a sport where power and speed is required? So the signal traveling from the brain to the muscle, if that can travel a bit faster, is that beneficial for your sport? Or you can also think about, in my sport, is there a certain elasticity and stiffness involved? So if I have more elasticity or more stiffness, is that helpful for my sport? So let's think about a few examples that I'm working with or I have worked with. So I have worked with tennis for a long time and BMX. So let's choose a few examples from these two sports. So in the sport of BMX, for those of you who don't know what BMX is, basically there are different disciplines, but it's a race, and they race down the Olympic discipline of BMX Supercross. It's a race where athletes race down a hill, then there are jumps and they go to a course and whoever finishes first wins. That's a short explanation. So no offense to my BMX riders if I made it a little bit too easy here. Anyway, let's get back to the topic. So the sport of BMX is highly speed and power dependent. So we use plyometrics in our training really to teach and train the firing frequency. So the faster the signal from the brain can travel to the muscle, the better it will be in the performance on the BMX bike. So we use plyometrics in our training. We choose the plyometrics in our training to make the athletes faster and more powerful. The other example in tennis, where I've worked in for a long time, is there are two benefits of plyometrics. So one is obviously the speed and power development. Tennis is also a sport where you require a lot of speed and power. But also, if we think about the upper body in tennis, the elasticity is important. So it's very much about the stretch shortening cycle. So you stretch, load the muscle, and you release the muscles. If you can see myself here, I'm just demonstrating a forehand, let's say. Yeah, so the muscles of the trunk get stretched, and then they release, and all the energy goes into the swing. The same is true for the serve. So if you're here, you're serving, so the muscles, it's not only, don't look at these muscles in isolation, but the principle is the same. So the muscles here get stretched, and then stretched, and then the recoil, so stretching, recoil, and that results in a higher velocity of the racket towards the ball. So this is one benefit, the elasticity, loading and recoiling. The other benefit is, for example, in tennis, if we look at the lower body and we look at the footwork, there is such thing that is called a split step, so which means that the athlete, the tennis player, is doing a small step before he changes direction or before he runs into the ball. And that step is basically a plyometric action. Yeah? So the muscles of the lower body are stiff and they act like a spring, which helps the athlete to get out of that position from the ground a little bit quicker. So if athletes go into a volley, so taking the ball out of the air, there's a split step before they move to the ball. If they are on the baseline, there is a split step before they move to the left, to the right, forward or backward. Basically, there's not that much forward or backward movement. Most of the movements in tennis are lateral. However, that doesn't change the importance of the split step. So splitting and then moving into the desired direction. So the elasticity and especially the stiffness of the lower body is important for that split step. And if you can gain a split second in that split second in a split step, you will have a competitive advantage. So now it's up to you to think about what sport are you competing in, and can any of these benefits of plyometric training be beneficial to you, and then you can choose to do plyometric in your training. So to wrap it up, if you ask yourself the question why to choose plyometric training, think about the adaptations of plyometrics before. So the adaptations are on a neuromuscular level, the firing frequency, so the signal from the brain to the muscle travels faster, so you will be faster, so more speed and more power. The adaptation on a muscular level, so thinking about the muscle-tendon complex, plyometrics makes the muscle-tendon complex stronger, which leads to a higher stiffness. So again, think about if you can use extra speed and power in your sport, you better choose for plyometrics. If you can use extra stiffness in any body part for your sport, you also better choose for plyometrics. If none of these examples apply to you, then there's no point in doing plyometrics.